Warning: this video contains graphic and sensitive content about rape and crimes against children. Your viewing discretion is advised. Tommy Lynn Sells and his twin sister, Tammy Jean, were born on June 28, 1964, in Oakland, California. When the twins were just 18 months old, they contracted spinal meningitis and, unfortunately, Tammy Jean died. After the death of his twin, Tommy was sent to live with his auntie Bunny Wapole in Holcomb, Missouri. Tommy would be reunited with his mother when he was just 5 years old, after she found out that his auntie Bonnie had actually made plans to adopt him. From an early age, Tommy was pulled between different family members and never really felt like he belonged anywhere. Unfortunately, Tommy's life didn't get any better from here on out, and when he was 8, he was molested by Willis Clark, who did so with the permission of Tommy's own mother. It's also reported that his mother left him to fend for himself. He never went to school, and just by the tender age of 7, he was drinking alcohol. He was travelling down a dark and destructive path when at 13 years old he climbed into his grandma's bed completely naked. Sells was also known to drink, smoke, and abuse drugs. With all this going on, his mother once again abandoned him and left him to fend for himself. According to Sells' own accounts, he committed his first murder at just the age of 16, when he broke into a house and killed a man who was molesting a young boy. However, there's no official evidence to back up this claim, although it's likely to be true. For a few years, Sells drifted from place to place, picking up odd jobs wherever he could to make ends meet. He attempted to reunite with his family in Little Rock, Arkansas. However, this family reunion was extremely short-lived when he tried to rape a family member. In what is becoming a seemingly extremely common pattern, Sells was again left to fend for himself, in the only way that he knew: crime. He floated around committing strings of murders and robberies whilst holding short-term, low-skilled jobs such as working at carnivals and fairs. Working at the carnival, along with hopping trains, was perfect for Sells, as it meant he didn't have to stay in one place for too long, meaning it limited the chance that someone would get to know him or recognize him. Sells has one confirmed murder in Arkansas from 1983 when he was travelling around. Hal Atkins is his only confirmed victim from this time frame. However, Sells has confessed that he murdered 2 people. Following the murders in Arkansas, Sells travelled to St. Louis, Missouri. Later that year, in 1983, Sells was arrested for car theft and given a 2-year sentence. He only served until February of 1984, when he was released early, even though afterwards he actually failed to keep his probation terms. Shortly after he was released from prison in Missouri, he started working at another carnival/county fair, where he met 35-year-old Ina Court and her 4-year-old son, Rory. Sells admits to the murder of Court and her 4-year-old son after going back to their house. According to Sells, he went back to Court's house, where he caught her rummaging through his things. In a fit of rage and, self-defense, he beat her to death with a baseball bat. He also killed 4-year-old Rory simply because he was a witness to the crime. Rory and Ina's bodies were discovered just 3 days later. However, by this time, Sells was long gone. There were no witnesses to the crime, and forensic testing just wasn't at the standard that we know it is today. Sells served a short time in prison, again, in Missouri for drunk driving and crashing his car. His sentence lasts from September 1984 until May 16, 1986. Once released from prison, Sells murdered a stranger in what he calls self-defense, despite there being no evidence to back up the claim of his, self-defense. He was up to no good once again, where he headed to Aransas Pass, Texas, where he was hospitalized after an almost fatal heroin dose. This, like other events in his life, didn't deter him though, and shortly after being released from the hospital, he stole a car and went on his merry way to Fremont, California. During his time in Fremont, California, It is suspected that Sells is responsible for the death of 20-year-old Jennifer Dewey and 19-year-old Michelle Xavier. Dewey was shot to death and Xavier was found with her throat slit. Just a year later, in 1987, Sells murdered 20-year-old Stephanie Stroh. He drugged her with LSD before strangling her and tying weights to her body before throwing her body into a hot spring in Winnemucca, Nevada. This crime has never been officially linked to Sells, which is a common sort of theme that we'll see throughout the Sells case. Shortly after this horrific murder, Sells entered the home of the Dardenne family. Now, this is probably his most brutal and heinous crime. A warning disclaimer, the details of this crime are extremely graphic, brutal. There is mentions of rape and a crime against a child. So, as I said in the beginning of the video, your viewer discretion is advised. He shot Keith Dardenne point blank in the head before cutting off and mutilating his penis. He then proceeded to bludgeon 3-year-old Peter to death with a hammer. His final victims of the Dardenne family massacre was Elaine, who was 7 months pregnant at the time of the attack, and her unborn child. Sells raped and bludgeoned her in the head with a baseball bat. He actually attacked her so hard that the shock forced Elaine's body into an early labour. In a sick and depraved move, Sells then proceeded to beat Elaine and the newborn to death. Once Elaine and the baby were dead, he inserted the baseball bat into her vagina and took the pair into bed before leaving. In 1990, Sells was sentenced to 16 months in prison for a theft of a truck. During this sentence, Sells was diagnosed with a personality disorder, which consisted of antisocial, borderline, and schizoid features, substance abuse disorder of opioids, cannabis, amphetamines, and alcohol, along with bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and psychosis. The end would come on December 31st, 1999, when Sells sexually assaulted, stabbed, and slit the throat of 13-year-old Kayleen Harris. He also slit the throat of 10-year-old Crystal Searles, who amazingly managed to survive and managed to get help at a neighbour's house. Searles not only managed to survive the savage attack, she also managed to travel 1/4 of a mile to the said neighbour's house with a severed trachea, which is an injury that should have killed her within minutes. Now, much to her bravery and just courage, Sells was able to work with police and create a sketch and bravely gave an account of what happened to her that evening. Police were able to apprehend Sells within days of the sketch being made and issued. Police also suspected that Sells was confessing to more crimes than he had actually committed. Now, the state attorney of Jefferson County, Illinois, actually refused to charge Sells with the quadruple murder of the Dardenne family in 1987 due to his confession. The state attorney himself, or herself, states that the details that Sells provided do not match the evidence found at the crime scene. Regarding the Dardenne murder, he also changed his story multiple times on how he had met the Dardenne family and the details of this case. Now, I sort of actually still do believe that Sells was the one who committed this awful, horrible crime, and that the confession statements, do not make a lot of sense, and his story changed because he's a narcissist and because of the other mental health issues that he had. Prosecutors in Illinois wanted Sells to stand trial in order to clear up the confusion surrounding the murders that he had admitted to. However, under Texas law, death row inmates are not actually allowed to leave the state. So, Sells was charged with murder, rape, and attempted murders for the crimes that he had committed in 1999. However, he has confessed to being responsible for over 70 murders, a claim which has never been confirmed. Police are, however, able to confirm that he is responsible for 22 murders. Tommy Lynn Sells was sent to death row in the Alan B. Polinsky Unit, Livingston, Texas, which belongs to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. He was officially received by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice in November of 2000. In 2004, Sells made a shocking confession when he told authorities that on October 13, 1997, he broke into the home of 10-year-old Joel Kirkpatrick. He stole a butcher's knife from the kitchen before stabbing Joel to death and fighting with his mother, Julie Ray Harper. Now, Harper had actually been convicted for the murder of her 10-year-old son back in 1997. However, with Sells' confession and advances in forensic techniques, she was finally acquitted and able to mourn for her son in 2006. Knowing that she was free and the monster responsible for her son's murder was actually seeing justice. Sells admitted to crime writer Diane Fanning in a face-to-face interview that he had killed Joel after Harper was rude to him earlier that day at a convenience store. Sells decided that he had to get revenge, so he followed her home and murdered her 10-year-old son. On January 3, 2014, Sells' execution date was set for April 3, 2014 by a Del Rio judge, with the death sentence to be carried out by the Texas State Penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas. Sells declined to make a final statement before being given the lethal injection. At 6:27 p.m. on April 3, 2014, Tommy Lynn Sells was declared dead. Interestingly, and amazingly bravely, Crystal Sells, along with other victims' families, were present for his execution. Sells' confirmed victim count is 22, although by his own admission he is responsible for well over 70. Here's a few of the crimes that Sells is a suspect for. The murder of Suzanne Cox, 27, who went missing from New York in May 1987. The murder of Melissa Temblay, 11, on September 11, 1988, in Lawrence, Massachusetts. He's also suspected of the murder of a co-worker in Texas in 1989, the murder of Stephanie Meny, 13, in Springfield, Missouri, on November 18, 1994, the murder of Mary Beatrice Perez, who was aged 7, in San Antonio, Texas, on April 18, 1999. He's also a suspect in the case of the sexual assault and murder of Haley McCone, who was aged 14, in Livingston, Kentucky, on May 23, 1999. There aren't many things that we know for sure in the case of Tommy Lynn Sells. His confirmed murder count is 22, but by his own accounts it could be well over 70. Hopefully, with further advances in DNA profiling and forensic testing, we may be able to give the victims' families some answers as whether Tommy Lynn Sells was actually responsible. So, thank you for tuning in to this week's video. I recently just reached 150 subscribers, so I wanted to say thank you all so much. It really means a lot. It sort of spurs me on to keep going and making content, so don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, go follow my social media or whatever you want to do. And remember, friends, stay safe and stay spooky.